What I've always loved about the experimental and avant-garde scenes is an embrace, at least theoretically, of being able to fail in front of an audience, of being able to try things that you don't know how it's going to go, and not needing to just lock into these really tight kind of templates.
Welcome back, friends. I'm Kristen Merding, and this is Torches. Today, we have experimenter Gelsey Bell. Gelsey is a Brooklyn-based multidisciplinary performance creator, composer, and vocalist who works in many contexts: opera, theater, music, sound walk, and installation. She's a core member of ensembles Thing and Y and Verispeed. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Gelsey. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. So how did you come to be in downtown performance?
Okay, where to start? Well, I guess I first was introduced into the world through my sister, my older sister Biba, who's a choreographer and has also been in the downtown scene since, I don't know, last 25 years. So I made a few pieces with her when I was still in college in Pennsylvania, and so I was like coming and doing performance in the city at that point. But that downtown world is also Brooklyn. For me, downtown has always included Brooklyn because I've only been around for 25 years or so. So, anyway, just to state, like, all of my first performances were in, like, Bed-Stuy in downtown Brooklyn.
I love it. And did you come in as a singer originally, or did you come in as an actor? How did you first start making?
I guess as a singer, songwriter, performance artist is maybe the best way to put it. I feel like I've never been very disciplinarily focused in terms of my internal artistic process. I feel like those terms are really set up through institutions. So yeah, but I was working with music institutions and dance and performance art institutions.
Great. And you said once that your music is experimental but sincere. Can you?
Yeah, where did I say that?
In research that I did.
Yeah, fair.
It was an interview. It was about the piece that you guys were working on for the space in Brooklyn, the Pioneer Works. It was for Pioneer Works.
Oh, interesting.
You were talking about that piece.
I mean, I definitely think of my work as experimental in the sense particularly of the tradition of experimental art, in the same way that downtown is no longer just downtown Manhattan, includes Brooklyn and other parts of the city. I feel like experimental art includes lineages that don't mean you're always using the theories of experimenting. So I feel like sometimes I'm using those theories and sometimes I'm just continuing techniques that come from the legacy of that. But I do think that I feel like that comment must have been made in reaction to maybe particularly like the 80s experimental scene where there was this real feeling of pastiche and like having a little wink about everything. And I think that I am much more of the school, like many people my generation, that is like finding sincerity and connecting to like a more transparent heart place than was cool for a while.
Right. I definitely feel that transparent heart place in your work.
Right.
Like when I think of that final aria in Morning, it's so moving and so transporting and takes us into this whole other imaginative realm and emotional realm. And I do think of that so much in your work. Exploration and risk are also a really big part of your work.
Totally.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're going after and why you work in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like why not have some fearlessness? And I guess my feeling has been as an artist, I I think it's important to be able to fail, and that means failing in front of people because performing is my art form. So I think that what I've always loved about the experimental and avant-garde scenes is an embrace, at least theoretically, of being able to fail in front of an audience, of being able to try things that you don't know how it's going to go, and not needing to just lock into these really tight kind of templates that you see in more commercial realms. I always found that work more interesting, and I think that, like, on a philosophical level, I don't start a piece knowing how I'm going to feel about it by the end. The whole point of making the piece is to discover things, to work through things, to think through difficult subjects. It's essential to be able to risk not knowing where it's going to go and how it's going to lead you.
That takes me to think about mourning. I mean, that was dealing with a very complex subject. Do you want to talk a little bit about your process as you were evolving that work?
Sure. I mean, so Mourning was inspired by this book by Alan Weisman, The World Without Us. And the feeling I had reading the setup of the book being, if all humans disappeared right now, what would happen to different creatures and different processes on the planet? How would that affect the climate change we're in the middle of? How would that affect the thriving of different animals, etc. And I started reading the book being like, okay, let's get ready to read a book about the environment. Like, I'm sure this is going to be hard and, like,
depressing.
Yes, and I'm going to feel full of doom and all of that. And instead, I was full of so much hope and just kind of awe at the, the power of the planet. And so when I started Mourning, like, figuring out how to put that on stage, I didn't know, like, what would be able to translate. There's certain parts of that kind of story that I think, I could kind of find, like, okay, how does this work and how does this work? But yeah, it's, I guess it's also like there was a real, a lot of what that piece is doing and a lot of what I am trying to do in all of my, I think most of my work at this point, is really kind of focus in on non-human protagonists and tell stories that highlight beings other than humans. And it turns out there's a lot of artists and theater goers that, like, that is really hard for them to do. Like, theater in particular, I think is very human focused. And so I think part of, especially early on, it became very clear that I had to kind of make some methodologies to deal with that head on. And know that kind of teaching the audience, it's not even teaching, laying the groundwork so an audience member could start focusing on non-human protagonists. We are men with an explosion. Some audience members do that really easily, and other audience members that was a real struggle for them. So figuring out how to lay the groundwork for the range of those reactions and to not alienate anyone within that situation, but hopefully like make it possible for people to just become emotionally involved in stories they maybe hadn't been before.
And yet you are very people oriented in the sense that you collaborate with a lot of the same folks over and over.
Oh yeah,
again.
I mean, I'm a person. I'm a human. Totally.
Yes.
Humans are all over, obviously, and the show is for humans. So yes.
So
they're not going anywhere.
How does your work enriched by those collaborations that are longstanding collaborations, like with Thing and Why or with Vera Speed?
I love working with people. I love working collaboratively. I love, in particular, working with people who have different instincts, who have different trainings, who have just like that, where we complement each other. I love work that makes space for a real diversity of people. And I think like the Thing and Why, we're all coming from different directions. We have somewhat of a range of trainings. We have somewhat of a range of what our kind of aesthetic interests are. And so I think we really complement each other and learn from each other. And I feel like, especially with the collaborative pieces we make, like, Be That Mouthful, which was our most recent one, to like This Takes Place Close By, or Time, which we made a very long time ago at this point, that we're given space to try things out with a group of people and get feedback from them and figure out how to like, we make shows based on themes, basically. And
you're all composer performers in Thing and Why, right?
Yeah. We're all composer performers. I feel like it's almost like the work I do with them is the most experimental, because it's a space where it's like, well, let's just try this out and see if it works. Supposedly that's a British Isles thing, while the French were getting hard on fifths and fourths. The early polyphonic and music in England was obsessed with thirds. It's just like a variety of show of all of us trying these different things and responding to each other in the back and forth of that. So I definitely feel like I grow because of that.
Has your work as an ensemble evolved over time? Because of the collaboration?
I'm sure in some ways it has, and the members have changed, and like who's all of the artistic voices of each individual member has matured as time goes on. But at the same time, I think that like when you start off in this stuff and you don't know what you're doing and no one's taking you seriously yet, and you're not trying to be professional and you're not relying on it to pay rent. I feel like the spirit of that is something that we've actually worked really hard to hold on to. And in that way, I think we are just as messy as we ever were, in a way that I think is positive. And maybe more so in our group, in our kind of collaborative pieces than our individual work, if that makes sense.
Right.
But then like in a piece like Morning, where I'm, have Paul, who's both in Thing and Why and Vera Speed with me, and I've been collaborating with for a very long time. It is so helpful to have someone like that in a project, that we just have a shorthand. We know each other's capabilities really well. really respect any feedback I get from him. I respect feedback I get from everyone, but I think because we've been working together so long, sometimes just those conversations happen very easily.
And he has an understanding of your aesthetic.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
In a way that other people coming in for the first time might not,
exactly.
will not share.
Yeah, exactly. That shorthand goes a long way.
You made an allusion about thinking why sort of your collaboration together not being in the marketplace or commodified, right?
Yeah.
By saying that the compensation is not in the focus of that collaboration.
That's changed throughout the years too, but certainly when we started, we had no money. So it's,
there's obviously been a lot of shifts in the field in these last few years in particular, and a lot of concerns about exploitation of artists and not compensating artists appropriately. For you, you once said, "Can we take some time to change behavior now to create a sustainable economy?" What would a sustainable economy look like for you as a working artist?
Part of it means being paid for your time in the context of how much it takes to live in a place, right? So. I recently moved. My rent just went up 35%. That means my day rate and my weekly rate just went up, because that's what I need in order to stay here. There's plenty of artists I know that very adeptly, have their primary money jobs and aren't relying on performance and art to pay for the bulk of their lives. But I'm not currently in that situation, and I haven't been for a while. I've been basically, primarily an artist on a monetary level for almost 10 years. For 10 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know, right? So we're going to see if it lasts. So I think it would be great if that could continue. And I think it would be great if that could continue for a whole community of people, not just very specific people. I feel like something that I've thought about, and I maybe have talked about with you and other harp artists during all the conversations, we had throughout the years.
I'll just explain. HARP is the residency program at HERE, the HERE Artist Residency Program, and Gelsey was a member of that group.
Basically, I think in a lot of ways, because of kind of the mode of capitalism that we do here, the mode of capitalism in the U.S., and also just how things are set up, the arts economy is set up to support works of art and not people. Right? So I think a sustainable arts economy would support people.
And how would you think it would do that? What are the things that are needed?
Part of the thing is, the freelance back and forth, right? It's really hard. There's a lot of things that are not supported as a freelancer. If you make below a certain amount of money, you can get health insurance. That is maybe about to go away for many artists. And so then because health insurance is attached to job, the freelance aspect of being an artist becomes really difficult unless you basically have a Broadway gig. That I'm so thankful for when I've been on equity contracts, when I've been on 802 contracts, I'm very thankful for what the unions have done, but the unions ignore many artists. And anyone working in the quote unquote downtown scene, the experimental scene, we are freelancers that do not have the kind of organizations of support that those union jobs have, which when you're on your jobs, you're on salary, you have health insurance, you have retirement funds being set up. So I'm so thankful to have had that for a year and experienced that.
That was on Great Comet, when Great Comet, which you started downtown, then transferred to a commercial run.
I've been with Great Comet since the beginning, so yes, that's through multiple workshops and 4 productions, including the Broadway production. So yeah, I think that kind of support for people's lives that then sustains that support even if you don't have a job, right? Like means you can get unemployment, means your health insurance isn't going to go away, means that you're given some sort of cushion before you get to the next job, would sustain people being able to live their lives as artists and not just, support the artworks, which, a lot of, I mean, obviously arts funding in like the avant-garde experimental scene is in a really, a place of crisis right now. But the little that is there is for projects, not people.
Yeah, one thing that I've been working on, I'm serving on a mayor's commission, and there's a group of about 10 of us that have been working on health insurance,
Yeah.
and there's kind of two different prongs to it. One prong is pooled health insurance for small nonprofits, because like Google with thousands of employees gets a great rate, but
Yeah.
small nonprofits
Yeah.
pay a lot more than a Google does
Totally.
per employee. So it's to explore a pooled fund where nonprofits could get into that. And
Yeah.
then another thing which would help nonprofits be able to offer more health insurance because it
Yeah.
would be a lower cost. Then the other thing that we've been working on is a freelancer's floating insurance. So it's what you're saying, that the
Yeah.
insurance sits with the person, not with the employer. And so if you work in some small nonprofit for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
they pay into your health insurance for those 3 weeks, and then you continue with your health insurance to your next job, and that next employer has to pay into your health insurance. So
Which is basically how equity works, right? Like you just have to be on equity contract for an
Exactly.
off-Broadway or Broadway show,
But
but
this is
it doesn't have to be one show.
right, and this is just acknowledging that most artists are not employed by one employer.
Yeah.
So let them have their insurance travel with them.
Oh yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll do a project for like a week and a half or for 2 months,
Right.
And the only way to survive is to have many, many projects throughout the year. The only
Right.
way to survive as a creator is also to have many, many projects that you are like trying to fundraise for.
And simultaneously cooking
Simultaneously.
on the stove.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And certainly that balance between like the current administrative work of an artist, a creating artist, and like the actual making of the work is laughable. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just become more extreme as like there are fewer commissioning programs. If you want to have a show at a theater, now you need to have 2 other theaters that are co-producing it. So the amount of like administrative work that artists are expected to do at this point, I think, is not sustainable. And definitely means that they are not having the proper time to actually create work.
Universal basic income would help.
Would
Yeah.
would be great. Would love that.
Now you're just talking about institutions and working with institutions.
Right.
How have institutions or producers supported or failed to support your work?
Yeah, I mean, well, so the HARP program, your residency program, is the most support I have ever received. And I think certainly one of the things that is hard now as, a quote unquote mid-career artist is that it seems very possible I will never receive that level of support ever again, which would mean
I
I
hope
can't.
that is not true.
I hope that's
Gelsey
not
Bell.
true, but it has been 3 years since I did that show, and I have been trying, and it has been very difficult.
I liked all the flavors they would dream. French fries with whale poop ice cream, topped with pickles and gold leaf. Foamy foods and earth-aged eggs, moldy milks and gymnastics on kegs.
There's
And that
definitely
show
a
was
feeling.
so lauded
Oh,
and critically
yeah.
acclaimed and has been touring, and so
Yes.
that feels really hard. That
Yeah,
feels
it's
really
totally.
Yes.
Yeah, it was as successful as I think as it could have been, and yet there is just so little support for the next show, and so there's definitely a feeling of like, okay, maybe I will never be able to make something on that level again, even though that level is still only 5 cast members.
Yeah.
So I hope that's not the case, but I also have to be practical because that really might be the case.
Well, I really hope it's not. You're a voice that we need to hear more of, and the work deserves to be supported in so many different ways.
But I mean, it's hard because there's just, there's a lot of voices that need to be supported and a lot of institutions that are not able to do much supporting right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really recognize that. And I'm really happy to have come from really DIY roots. So it's very easy to continue on those. And it's, because I have been given so much support by the music world, it's like I can see ways forward that stay within the musical realm, even though I would love to continue working with designers and creating shows on bigger levels.
In that context, with the challenges that artists are facing in this time and institutions, do you feel like the downtown scene still exists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to disappear. Because there's no other city like New York. And that's for a few reasons, right? I have one friend who's been living here since the 80s, and he's, we were having that conversation 15 years ago, and he was like, well, as long as the critical apparatus is here, as long as the New York Times continues to hold the power it does, and there's nothing else doing that in Chicago or LA or whatever, like, it's going to be New York. Like, if things are going to happen, it's still going to be New York. And obviously I talk to artists in, say Germany or the Netherlands or France. And in some ways there's a lot more financial support. There's a lot more support for the lives of people. But also at the same time, the kind of drive and spirit of New York is so different and so unique. And I think that it might be that there's more and more people who have multiple bases because they can't afford to be in New York full time. But I don't think the importance of New York is going to go away. And as long as I can stay here, I will.
Is New York a collaborator for you? It feels like...
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, as are other places that are important to me, right? I think I grew up, 3,000 miles from here in California, and that continues to deeply influence my work.
In what ways?
Like, certainly in the culture that I bring with me, which, you can't run away from. It's just there. But also in terms of the literal land, right? Like, there's a reason why in a piece like Morning, I have a song called Bristlecone Pines. There are no bristlecone pines in New York City, but the importance of those species, those landscapes, stays very present for me.
Bristlecone pines on a whistling edge of cold rocky mountain tops. Bristlecone pines that had only been 14 inches tall now find themselves in a ripe old age.
And you've made outdoor pieces.
Yeah.
I commissioned this wonderful piece that you made during the pandemic. Could you talk a little bit about that collaboration with Greenwood Cemetery?
That piece was Cairns, a sound walk for Greenwood Cemetery. Yeah, I mean, I love making site-specific work. I've made a lot of it. And so
I've also seen you in the under the ground there at Greenwood.
In the catacombs.
In the catacombs, the name just went.
Yeah. So they're
doing amazing things with your voice resounding through those cool catacombs.
Oh yeah, the acoustics there are really special. And for 3 years, I curated a series there, and so I've been really lucky to perform there multiple times. And I think that it comes back to this this discussion of non-human protagonists, right? I think like the land and the specificities of every land is very present to me. And so I like making site-specific work because I think it gives one an opportunity to make that stuff heard, make that stuff transparent. And making cairns in particular, I was able to really dive into the history of particular people buried at Greenwood and particular species of trees that you're walking by. And, you know, that piece was very much responding to being in New York in 2020 and kind of how many people we were losing because of the pandemic, the poetics of what kind of healing a cemetery, you know, it's just like a garden for healing in the face of mortality. You know, you don't need a set designer for that. It's just there.
Yes.
Right. So it was really wonderful to make a piece for the specificity of that. And I feel so lucky to have because of making that piece, being introduced to folks at Greenwood and continuing many projects there. And I mean, this is definitely a thing in New York. Every freelance artist in New York has certain institutions that help sustain them, right? Mm-hmm. And just like here has been one of those ones for me, through the like support and advocacy of you, Greenwood has become one of those institutions for me. And I'm so thankful for that. And also very thankful to have an institution that is not only arts focused, right. Because even though I have the profession of an artist, I really enjoy collaborating with, scientists or historians or like just being able to come from a place of just like citizen and human, as opposed to this like strange, cultural class of the weirdo artist.
Yes, totally. You spoke about poetry a minute ago. Does your identity, you're a scholar, you're a poet, you're a composer, you're a writer, you're a white woman. Does that identity, does it inform the work that you make?
There's the identity markers of things that I do, right? I write music, I write text, and then there's the identity markers that I have inherited that I grew up with. So certainly being a white woman, being a settler colonialist in America, thinking about the heritage of, my ancestors, very much influences both. Yeah, how to say it? It's almost like there are certainly influences in just like how I create what I create and all of those kinds of things. But I feel like I spend a lot of work trying to unpack what that is. And then also, there are influences that aren't there, right? Like many of my ancestors assimilated hard. So there are aspects of cultures that I am genetically connected to that I'm not connected to in practice. And so part of that, and that's a very common white settler experience in America. And so I think part of my exploration of myself and that ends up in my art is making sense of that. And certainly, I think this is even more as a Californian. My dad partly grew up in Hawaii, right? We were European Americans that just kept leaving places, right? And so I think I have this real, what to say, struggle and storm with feelings of belonging, right? And feeling like I am not of certain places, and I don't have that strong connection the way, say an Indigenous person would have. And I think there is something really wonderful about the existence in New York, because it feels like it breeds a culture that accepts that feeling in a way that I do not always feel in the like white Californian culture, shall we say, which is taking it's, you know, I mean, this can get very complicated, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think that like yes, those dynamics show up in different ways, and I personally found New York to be very nurturing about that aspect of my life.
Is your interest in site-specific, like this connection between place and performance, related to what you're talking about?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because every place has history. Like, I'm really interested in the history and context of all places that I find myself in, and always thinking through, you know, what is my relationship to that history? What is the relationship of other people I'm interacting with in those places? And wanting to really listen to that. I don't think anything is neutral. I don't think anything is not political. I don't think it's ever helpful to have less information than more. And I think that, yeah, I mean, in like a fundamental way, I think it's really important to fully understand the histories and the context of a place in order to find the best future forward.
What is a moment of joy? What has been a moment of joy in your work?
Oh, so many. I mean, being a musician in particular is so special because there is just like a sense of community and a social life built into it. Like, I am so lucky that I am constantly meeting new people and then being in situations where I make music with them. I go to these wordless, vulnerable places with them. I feel like, you know, as like social emotional creatures, there's so many ways that that feeds me. And so, yes, I have so many moments of joy just performing with people. Yeah.
I love that. You could see the joy, in particular in Morning. There are a couple of the songs where the earth is like coming back to life, and you all are inhabiting that earth coming back to life. And there was this beautiful joy across the stage with all five of you that I remember vividly.
Yeah.
How do you see your art evolving in the coming years?
Well, I definitely feel very lucky to be in a place in my kind of artistic journey where I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of interest, and I've been lucky enough to have pieces like Morning and Cairns, which I've been able to realize fully. And in getting the chance to realize a piece fully, learning what my instincts are, learning to be able to trust those instincts more. So I just want to keep going. I have so many, I feel like every time I research a piece, I learn more that then is like, great, that'll go towards the next piece. And I definitely feel like I want to, you know, continue writing pieces over long time periods. I think the part of me that loves geology, I'm so happy to have finally found a place in art for that.
I love that idea.
And I feel like I'm, you know, so excited to continue exploring the voice and singing with people. One of the pieces that I'm starting to work on right now is about black holes and is dealing with astrophysics and like time over those kind of that storytelling. And I'm really envisioning that as, you know, a piece of group singing. And so excited to just take these ideas that often are just in scientific or educational contexts and put them into the like playful worlds of art. And I think that will just continue to feed itself for a while.
That's wonderful. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to share that's important to you?
Yes, what would that be? We have talked about a lot of things. I feel like some of the things that I had thought about ahead of time, we have actually talked about. So I probably will think of something in an hour, but at the moment,
Well, you can let me know.
I mean, I want to ask you questions, but I know that's not the point. But it does, like, I don't know. There is this feeling that some of the conversations we're having about, like, oh, it's, the crisis, the financial burden, like, it does kind of feel like those conversations were happening when I showed up 20 years ago. So I wonder if, if you feel like you're seeing anything.
I feel like it's
changing.
worse.
It's just worse. Okay.
Because the thing that I think is worse is that I think it's the clusterfuck of the two things at the same time.
Yeah.
It's that the field is finally acknowledging that it's been exploitative of artists.
Yeah.
And that it's important to compensate artists appropriately. And that the field is trying to change its practices to compensate artists appropriately at the same
While the
time
money
as
is
there's
going
this
away.
huge constriction
Yeah.
in funding available.
Yeah.
So I feel like those two factors are fighting each other terribly, and that I feel like artists and institutions are both suffering as a result.
Yeah.
I also think that there is there's been a breach of trust that has surfaced. That was there already, but it has surfaced, and I think that there is a healing that needs to happen. Everyone needs to go to the Greenwood Cemetery together. No, but there needs to be a processing of that, and a way that we figure out how you go forward.
Yeah.
With mutual trust and mutual respect, and a way for institutions and artists to work together in a way that can support the art making.
Yeah.
And I think that it is so much harder for artists to work outside of the marketplace in the situation that we're in without any of the safety nets that we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the reasons I wanted to have these conversations is to try to hear from people what they see as opportunities, what they see as chances for how we go forward as a field, or to also share what are things that have been working in our community that might work in other contexts. So that's what's really interesting to me right now, is to think about what could we do differently that is respecting the needs of the moment.
Yeah. I also feel like on top of that, like the kind of crises that we have, I mean, obviously we're, we haven't had anything quite on the level of like Hurricane Sandy in a while, which is great, but we know that more are coming, right? Like there's a huge crisis of just being ready for the more things that climate change is going to just keep bringing
us.
And so like I definitely, not to like bring things down, but I definitely feel like that is going to be a big part of what artists are dealing with for the next who knows how many decades, right?
And I know a number of artists like you. I mean, many of your works have been looking at these issues.
Right, totally. And even for people who aren't looking at it like looking at these issues in the content of their work, it's still affecting all of our lives, right?
Yes.
And maybe that feels a little more obvious, like in LA this year, but like next year it could be feeling more obvious in New York. So I also wonder, is there some way that we can just be smart about how we know that's going to keep happening, and that both means we have a culture that needs artists and that like is like requiring the ways that art can think through difficult subjects, but also like we need to know that whatever our new normal is has to take that into account.
Absolutely.
Anyway, That was
you.
what I was thinking. Nice to talk to you about all this.
Thank you so much, Gelsey. Thank you.
Yeah, happily.
Thank you. Thanks to HowlRound for hosting us, and we hope you'll come see more of Torches.